right, I thought that we would take a quick look at our test administrator manual. Let's look at some of the more interesting parts of the test administrator manual. You notice that this year the test administrator manual is the same regardless of what test you're giving in STAAR. Okay. Right, when we look at this, we're going to get to page 8, and it said STAR assessments no longer have a maximum time allowed to test. That does not mean they have until midnight. That means that the students have until the end of the regular school day. And so once the students are consolidated, those students who are taking longer to test, then the test administrator will remind them of time so that the students are not caught by surprise when it's time for the buses to be called. Okay, students should pause their test if they are going to take a break. There is a pause button that all the students should know about and that the test administrator should know how to guide the students to. Okay, you pause the breaks for water breaks, bathroom breaks, snack breaks, lunch, medical breaks, emergencies, consolidating the students. Your campus will tell you whether or not the students take their Chromebook with them when they get consolidated. Late arriving students, remember that the students have all day, so you need to make sure that your students that are coming in late have enough time to finish. Makeup testing, your campus test coordinator will get with you on those days. Students who become sick during a test. If the student has not completed the assessment, the student may complete the test upon returning to school within the scheduled testing window. For online administrations, which is all we're doing, the TDS will lock the students' responses for 8 hours. Will lock their student responses for 8 hours after pausing the test. Students who continue to test on another day will be able to view all questions, but will not be able to edit responses completed on a previous day. Okay, calculator and dictionary policies were discussed with you. All students should have gone through the practice website before they even start the test, so students should already be familiar with how to navigate through. Test security and confidentiality. Everybody had to take the online security test from TEA, the security video with the quiz on it from TEA, and then sign their oath. Testing irregularities should have been explained over and over and over again. We have procedural testing irregularities. We have serious testing violations in which I hope we never ever have to fill that paperwork out for Dickinson ISD. There are the penalties, which you have heard over and over. Students cheating. If the students are caught cheating, it will invalidate the student's test score. Okay, and the campus testing coordinator will need to score a score code of O for other. And then we will have the forms that we have to fill out, and of course, the student disciplinary action. Accessibility features, these are things that your students have been using throughout the year and that were turned on during our interim testing to make sure that they knew how to use them. These are those things in which the students have practiced through the practice test. Designated supports, these are those that are locally submitted. And then we have some that require TEA support, TEA approval, but those would have already been approved and you would already know about it. Content and language support, these are the ones that the students have to get online and practice because for content and language support, the word that they can get support on has a blue box around it, and the student has to be comfortable with clicking on that blue box. Okay, you have all received lots of training throughout the school year. You took your training on the LMS. You attended training by your campus testing coordinator. You have watched videos, you've watched PowerPoints, you've signed your oath of test security, otherwise known as a toast in Debbie's world. Okay, to prepare for online administration, you know your responsibilities. You help your students log in and view their test, but you don't help them with the test itself. You, of course, cannot read the material that the student is testing on. You cannot help them with test questions. You cannot stand over their shoulder and read test questions. Okay, arranging your testing area. Yeah, I'm sure your campus testing coordinator has gone over this with you. Okay, you need to arrange your room so that the students are not seeing each other's monitors as much as possible. You are arranging your room so that the students have room to work. Those students that need headphones, you have the headphones for them. Those students that need headphones with microphones have those as well. Okay, the testing material that you will hand out to the students, they have their test tickets. You have the test session ID, and that test session ID is secure and must be kept secure. You have pens or pencils, scratch paper or graph paper. Okay. You have to make sure you have the proper testing environment. That means no element of the testing room environment should hinder any student's performance. You have to have a testing do not disturb sign posted on the outside of your door. And this is where people get confused. An instructional environment should be maintained during testing windows. It is not necessary to conceal or remove instructional or reference materials in the testing area, classrooms, or hallways, unless they could provide assistance or are a direct source of answers for the subject. Okay. And then they give you examples of what would provide direct assistance. Clocks do not have to be covered up. That's an old thing that we used to have to do. Okay, workstations, desks have to be clear of books or other materials not required for the test. You have to have the students separated out from each other. Okay, make sure that no adult or student can use their cell phone or other electronic devices during the test. You have a form in which to read and a form in which the students need to sign. There always has to be a test administrator in the room. No, you cannot just step out, go to the bathroom, and come back. There has to be somebody in there. They work at their own pace. Okay, you need to make sure that the students only have access to the materials specifically allowed for that assessment. So if they're taking the science test, they should not have the math reference chart out. They're not allowed to talk to one another while testing is in progress for any student in the testing room. Okay, breaks. You can allow the students to take a break, but you cannot make them take a break. Students have to press the pause button when they do take their break. Okay, if they do not press the pause button, then within 20 minutes they will be logged out and they will have to log back in. Before reading the administration directions aloud, before distribute the following materials: scratch paper, pens and pencils, headphones, headsets, graphing calculators for those who are allowed, calculators for grade 8 science and biology, dictionaries for RLA, Now, remember that the students do not have to have a hard copy of the dictionary because they do have the online dictionaries. Okay, all devices should have been updated prior to test day. Okay, start the online test. Test administrators must provide a test ticket to each student. The student will launch the secure browser application, which you should have directions for that. Okay, you need to make sure that the students select the correct test and that they do not begin a practice test or an interim assessment. Okay. Now, this is confusing people. It says if students need assistance reading the on screen directions, test administrator may refer to the appropriate sections in Appendix C. That means that you do not read over the student's shoulder. You turn to Appendix C and you read the directions out of your test administrator manual rather than pointing to the monitor and reading off of the monitor. Okay, if the students ask you a question, your standard answer is, I can't answer that for you. Just do the best you can. Okay, you are not allowed to translate test questions or sections, rephrase or add information, read or discuss the students' responses to constructed response items, assist the students with responses to any test item. Okay, once the students are done with their test questions, they need to click the Submit Test button. Okay, if they accidentally click submit and they're not done, you have to contact your test coordinator. Okay, before the students leave the testing area, you have to collect their test ticket. You have to collect your test session ID. If you are leaving the room and consolidating, then that test session ID comes down. If you're leaving the room for lunch, that test session ID comes down and you put it back up when you get back from lunch. You gather up all scratch paper, graph paper, reference materials, anything that the student has out, you collect it all up. All right, when you're done, you'll return your materials to the campus testing coordinator. The students who are absent keep their test tickets separate. Your testing coordinator will tell you how they want to do that. Okay. So the student test ticket, the session IDs, any reference material, scratch paper, or graph paper used during the test must be returned to the campus testing coordinator. Your seating charts with the start and stop times recorded must be returned to the campus test coordinator. And your test administrator manual should be returned to the campus coordinator. Now, if you're testing more than one day, they may ask you to hold on to it or they may ask you to turn it in each time. That is up to your campus, and you should already have that information. All right, here on page 33 is where the directions actually begin. And it tells you must read aloud word for word the bold text after the word say. And then here they have grade or subject. You know what grade or subject that you are testing for that day. You will include that into your comments. Okay, you know if you have students that are receiving content or language support, you will include that if so. Okay, now this is important. It says please make sure that your first, last name, and your birth date are correct on the test ticket. Here's the problem. If I have two Debbie Knopfsingers in my class, then if I give the wrong Debbie Knopfsinger a ticket, then those test scores get attributed to the wrong student. So that's why the students have to verify their date of birth, that it matches the test ticket. Because we do have students who have the same first and last name And we need to make sure that they are actually logging in with their proper TSDS number. Okay, record the start time for the test session on your seating chart. You must actively monitor students. That means you are observing students in the test room as they work on the test, but you are not reading what the students have on their screen. Okay, you are allowed to remind them how to use the tools. You should have a handout that has the tools for your guidance. You cannot answer any questions other than about the tools, though. If they're asking you questions about the content, you say, I can't answer that for you, just do the best you can. For lunch breaks, and instruct the students to log out of the test. For all other breaks, have them pause it. As the students complete the test, collect the test tickets. Now, your your campus testing coordinator may tell you to collect up the tickets as soon as the students log in. That is fine. Also, it is a campus preference. You need to pick up any scratch paper, graph paper, or reference materials that the students have written on. Record the stop time for the test session on your seating chart. You should not view, copy, or discuss the online test content at any time unless specifically given authorization to do so. That is, if you have a special case where you are doing ASL, where you are doing some type of transcribing or something like that. Okay? You will have a handout for you to use in class that looks something similar to this. And this is when a student has questions about the tools. This is what you are using as your guide to answer their questions. Appendix C, this is where it was referenced earlier that if a student has a question about directions on their monitor, you do not read from the monitor. You find that place in here and you read the directions from section C, Appendix C of your manual. Okay, that's a very quick overview of your test administrator manual. You have received lots of training from your campus test coordinator. You have received your test administrator manual. Any questions that you might have, make sure that you ask your test administrator prior to testing. Remember, any directions that you read, you have to read word for word out of your manual. If you have any questions, please make sure that you see your test administrator and that you get your questions answered before you actually give the test.